Okay, welcome back. My name is Adrian May, and today we're going to carry on our tour of SAT and ACT punctuation by talking about commas, and in particular the use of commas to introduce subclauses into a sentence. Now, because this video is quite long, I just want to go through some rules and examples in this one, and then I'll give another video after this where you can go through some actual ACT and ST questions to see if you've learned this well and if you can test your skills. So, to start with, we use commas to add subclauses to sentences. And we use these every day in our writing and everyday speech, and the majority of subclauses we add to sentences, we do use commas. However, we can also use dashes and parentheses to open subclauses, and this is something that the SAT and ACT test quite frequently. So, a subclause is any additional information we put into a sentence. You'll have a main sentence with a subject, verb, and usually with an object, and a subclause just adds some additional information to help us understand or clarify some terms or give additional detail. So, for example, you could have the sentence, the janitor, whose name was Claude, overheard everything the students were saying. And here we've added a subclause with the janitor's name. And as I said, we can use brackets or dashes to also add this subclause. So here we have the three examples of this sentence. Now, you would use brackets if you think the information is not very useful, and you would use dashes if you really want to emphasize the information. So if, for example, in this particular story, the fact that the janitor was called Claude was super significant later on, you would want to use dashes to emphasize to the reader that this was the case. However, the differences between these are purely subjective. It's up to you to know whether you think something is important, not important, kind of important, so whether you would use parentheses, dashes, or commas. And so it's useful to know that the SAT and ACT will never make you make a judgment call about things that are subjective. They won't make you decide, is this important, so I need dashes, or is it not important, so I need brackets. That's subjective. They can't make you choose. The answers have to be right or wrong. So firstly, if you have two answer choices that are identical, they both have to be wrong, and you can cross them out. What is usually the case in this kind of question is, in your answer choices, you might have a bracket, and if you do, the first thing you want to think is like, okay, I'm closing or opening something with a bracket. Do I have another bracket somewhere else, and is that a complete subclause? Likewise, if you see a dash in your answer choice, these dashes usually work in pairs, and so the first thing you want to think is, okay, I've got one dash. Is there another dash somewhere else that's opening or closing this subclause, and that these are working in a pair, and so that's the answer I'm going to choose. There is one other use of a dash, which is kind of like a colon, and this is when you only use one of these. I've made another video of those, so go and watch that also for more clarification, but often these dashes work in pairs, and so look out for that. And then likewise, if you see a comma, you need to think about, okay, is this opening or closing a complete subclause? And then you want to think about, does this subclause actually work? And so there are several ways they're going to trick you and might add something that looks like a subclause, but won't. Now, one of those is if you're adding a comma in the middle of a sentence, which doesn't actually introduce a subclause, it's interrupting the flow of the sentence or dividing up bits of the sentence that need to be kept together. So, for example, in the sentence, pasta, bread, and potatoes are all excellent sources of starch, they might give you the end of the sentence with excellent sources, of starch. And this is a comma that's pretending it's opening a subclause, but of starch isn't actually a subclause, it's part of the actual sources. It's sources of starch is the complete noun phrase. So we cannot add a comma there to separate that. That's not a proper subclause. That is interrupting an actual noun phrase as it should stand. The other common example is if they put one comma between a subject and a verb of a sentence. And you should never ever do that. You never want to have just one comma between your subject and verb. So, for example, if we took the basic sentence, I went to the shops. That's fine as it is. You would never put a comma after I. You wouldn't say I, went to the shops, because you're breaking up your subject, I, and your verb, went, with one comma. We don't need a pause there. Why would we do that? We wouldn't say I, went to the shops. It's incorrect. However, we can put more than one comma between our subject and verb if we add proper subclauses in. So, for example, you could have the sentence, I, because I was hungry, went to the shops. And the way they might try and test you with this is they might just put one comma in. They might say, I, because I was hungry, went to the shops. Sounds like that might work, but we only have one comma between our subject and verb. And this, because I was hungry, is a subclause. It needs to both start and end with a comma. And so I, because I was hungry, went to the shops. This now works. If we take the because I was hungry out of the sentence, it then reads, I went to the shops. It's back to our original sentence, and that works. And so we know our subclause is properly integrated. So we can't separate our subject and verb with 1 comma. We can separate with 2, and in fact, we can separate our subject and verb with loads of commas if we keep adding proper subclauses into the sentence. So we could say I, comma, because I was hungry, comma, having not eaten since breakfast, comma, went to the shops. We now have 2 subclauses, but our sentence I went to the shops still stands when we remove these subclauses from the middle. And we can also add subclauses within other subclauses. So you could say I, comma, because I was hungry, comma, having, comma, in fact, comma, not eaten since breakfast, comma, went to the shops. And this sounds like a lot. And if you had the answer choices in an exam of hungry, comma, having, comma, in fact, comma, if that was your answer choice, that would look super dense, and having all those commas there would look initially as if it was wrong. It looks like there are far too many commas, but when we separate the sentence out, we have our first subclause, because I was hungry, our second subclause, having not eaten since breakfast, and then a subclause within a subclause, this in fact, that we can also lift out of that second subclause, and everything still works. So all those commas are actually fine, and once we parse the sentence properly, we can figure out which is our subclause. Our main sentence is I went to the shops, that's still there. Everything else in the middle can be removed, so the sentence works as it is. The last type of question type I just want to talk about is when you have people's names and their jobs, because this is one that usually does confuse people quite a lot. But as long as we treat this like a subclause question and we use the same rules of being able to delete the subclause, we're going to be fine with these. So the 2 examples I always use are artist Pablo Picasso bought a house and the artist Pablo Picasso bought a house. The question here is, can we put commas around the name Pablo Picasso to make the name a subclause? Does the sentence work if we do that? And the answer is, in the first case, it doesn't. Artist bought a house doesn't work. So if we put commas around Pablo Picasso, in the first case we have artist, comma, Pablo Picasso, comma, bought a house. We're imagining that Pablo Picasso is a subclause that we can remove, but we will be left with artist bought a house, and this doesn't work. But the second example, the artist Pablo Picasso bought a house, we can put commas around the name Pablo Picasso here, because when we lifted that out from the sentence, we would have the artist bought a house, and that does in fact work. The key thing here is what's called the definite article. It's the. The artist bought a house. You have a definite article, the artist, so that is something that can be the subject of the sentence. The artist can do something. If you don't have a definite article, like artist can't do something. Artist can't buy a house or whatever. In that case, you need the name to be attached to it for it to become a proper subject. Artist Pablo Picasso is now a subject that can do things. But if that sounds a bit complicated, I just want you to remember to treat these like any other subclause question. If you have something surrounded by commas, if you take it out, if you delete it, and the sentence no longer works, if it no longer scans, then you know that subclause is incorrect. And that's always the way you want to do these name job questions. It will always steer you through to the right answer. Okay, great. So I hope that's helped. That's my first video on these comma subclauses things. If you want to look at the next video, it will give you some questions to work through, and hopefully these will make sense looking at these question types in action, and you'll be really well prepared for this really important and crucial question type in the SAT and the ACT. If you want to watch the other punctuation videos, there's one on semicolons, there's one on colons, there's ones on commas and lists. Please do watch those. And if you want any other help with the SAT and ACT, I am a personal tutor. I can help you with all aspects of these exams, from the English, the math, the science, the reading, the essays. And I do lessons in person, but also online over Skype. So I can help you wherever in the world you are. If you do want some help, my website is below. Please do get in touch. Also, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you want me to make any videos on other topics I haven't yet made, please leave them in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Hopefully I will see you guys all soon.